Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about Apush pages 36 to 43 podcast, and the topics are in the description, so you can check them out pretty easily. Um, and yeah, let's start. No time to waste. Okay, so let's talk about the southern colonies and native power. The main portion of this in the textbook is basically begins with Maryland talking about how it's a Catholic haven. So we'll begin there. So Maryland is a Catholic haven, as I said in the last video, is founded by Lord Baltimore, Catholic aristocrat, to provide religious freedom for Catholics in Protestant England. It wanted rich Catholic gentry and Protestant farmers that created religious tension. And in 1649, basically just declared death to all non-Christians and granted religious freedoms to all Christians, though. Cool. So the West Indies, way station to mainland America. Um, and if that sounds a little bit scripted, like how I'm saying it, it's because I'm reading off the chapter title and then I'm just talking about what I remember from it. So yeah. Okay. England seized Barbados in the 1620s, and they grew sugar. And there was a notorious thing called the Barbados Slave Code of 1661, which denied even the most fundamental rights to slaves and gave their masters virtually complete control over their labors, including the right to inflict vicious punishments for even slight infractions. So many early Carolinian settlers came from Barbados, bringing with them these enslaved Africans and plantation systems. Um, okay, so colonizing the Carolinas. South Carolina had really close ties to the Caribbean and developed around rice and indigo. Depended really heavily on African labor from the start, and there's frequent conflicts from the Native Americans, the Yamasee War, as I talked about last time. So Civil War, the cross of colonizing Carolinas. So rice was the principal export, and also indigo, but moss festooned Charlestown, named for the king, became the busiest seaport in the South. Um, so yeah, and let's talk about North Carolina. So it was settled by dissenters and tended to be settled by squatters, and a little bit more of a rougher, independent spirit. But there was obviously conflict with the Yamasee Indians, also clash with the Tuscarora Indians, who were defeated and they joined the Iroquois Confederacy. So the late coming Georgia, the buffer colony. The English crown was basically intended Georgia serves a buffer between the British colonies and the Spanish, the Spanish in Florida, and obviously the Spanish were kind of vengeful. So Georgia, whenever wars broke out, Georgia had a lot of breakout, was like kind of damaged in the war, and it was named in honor of King George II of England. And so the ablest of the founders was the dynamic soldier statements James Oglethorpe. That's directly from the textbook. So James Oglethorpe is basically a buffer, and it was also a refuge from the debtors and the poor. And originally it banned slavery and alcohol, but those rules didn't really last long. But it slowly became another plantation colony, though it was kind of poorer than its neighbors. Okay, so the plantation colony, what do they share? What kind of differences did they have? Compare and contrast is very, very important APUSH skill, so let's talk about it. Cash crops, tobacco, rice, indigo, in the future, cotton, slavery, not really urban development. It was more very spread out, uh, and not as religious in the plantation colonies, right? It was just focused on economy, as they say. Money is a big motivator. So the Iroquois Confederacy, right? Let's talk about them. Who are they? Why are they? Basically, six nations mainly: Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and the Tuscarora. They wanted a Great Law of Peace, which is a political alliance based on unity and consensus, and they played the French, Dutch, and English against one another to preserve their autonomy. They practiced a mourning war system to replace lost members through a warfare and adoption, and they were strong well into the 1700s. and they weren't really passive victims. They tried to fight back, but eventually they were quelled. So, discussion questions. What was more surprising to you about this section of early colonies? I think it was the Barbados slave code. I just can't get that out of my head. It was just so brutal, and um, I really just can't get myself to wrap my head around it. It just seems so brutal. And the things I can find relatable or familiar was North Carolina and kind of the Iroquois Confederacy in its own way, because just I just can't get my I just can't get my head around, like, think about it. You're getting overtaken, you're getting colonized, and they fought back and they tried to do some diplomacy, play people against each other. And North Carolina always had this rebellious spirit, and I can kind of relate to that because uh, I've I've never been the most particularly organized or something. I've always been a little bit out of the way of the normal crowd, but I can relate to sort of trying to fight for myself and fight for things I believe in, and being a little bit scrappy, you know. Thank you guys for watching this podcast, and see you guys later. Peace.